All right. Now, risk assessment of devices against the function protect of the NIST cybersecurity framework. Earlier, we talked about the devices and identify. Now we're going to talk about devices and protect function. So, how you definitely assess the protection of devices in a manner that is coherent and provide you the evidence required for you to have a confidence level that yes, your devices are protected. So I'll give you a few strategies here, about four of them that you can go ahead and start doing right away. One is the theoretical alignment that you need to exist here. So you're going to do your benchmark against other industry standards. You will use, in this case, we're using this cybersecurity framework, but you can also use the ISO 27001 and the Annex A as well to validate these controls. The CIS controls also used in this area very often. You can use that one as well, regardless, right? Anything but, hey, I thought this was a good idea. And based on my experience, we will assess this versus that. Try to avoid all of that. Use a third party, industry recognized framework that can assist you to do that assessment. That's the bottom line there. Then evaluate how comprehensive it is. So ensure that the definition covers all significant aspects of protecting the devices. So define what that means. Data security, access control platform, security, resilience. What actually, when you say protect, what does that mean to your organization when you are evaluating the protection of your devices? Now, I give you a hint here. You evaluate not only the framework will provide you the answer to that because there covers several areas, the CIS controls, the new cybersecurity framework, and so forth, but also in terms of breadth of what you're protecting. You're going to be protecting devices. You're going to be evaluating the network, applications, data, and users from these devices as well. So that is the asset classes. So two hints already built in there, the device classes and the framework, of course. The other one, you're going to consider any specific threats. Now, you cannot protect against everything in the universe. Some of them not even concerns you. Threats in the medical space while you in the, transportation industry, they do not correlate. So you're not going to worry about those threats. Now, if the threat is in common and so forth, no, you can go down this rabbit hole, if you will. But yes, they are focusing and targeting the healthcare industry while you're in the transportation, railroad industry. So you're not going to be worrying about those. Well, at least they will not be on the top of your list, put that way, right? Let's find a middle ground here. So they're not going to be on the top of your list. So you cannot protect against everything. So first of all, you're going to set the priority, see what is important that you should be considering. And not only important, try to be specific, even if the threat is against your industry. Not every threat applies to your organization. Perhaps you don't have that piece of software. Perhaps you don't have that piece of code that is being exploited. So you should be worrying about that. So be very specific. 2, evaluate practical implementation of security controls that you have to protect your devices. That's the other assessment you will do. Once again, you try to be as specific as you can, right? You're not going to assess against everything. Otherwise, you're never going to finish your assessment. And then be practical in implementation of those controls. Now, you're going to evaluate those controls against those specific threats. Once again, you can evaluate everything, and you will, right? Part of that cybersecurity framework, part of the CIS control, part of the ISO 27001. But the practical implementation, the key word here is practical. The practical implementation here, making sure those controls that are there to prevent those specific threats to your organization are well implemented, and everything else, of course, but those are the key. So your assessment and your reporting is coherent. There's a story to tell from these controls and these frameworks to these specific threats to these controls that prevent these specific threats. So your confidence level that your environment is secure is raised or confirmed that you are ready for that particular threat. You always going to be monitoring or not, but you ready to be resilient against this particular attack or threat. So you conduct some penetration testing. Now, the value of it is limited because it's very targeted to a particular solution, application, protocol, whatnot. Depends on how you write that RFP. And bring the penetration test and do that. You will have some validation of your controls through that way as well. To analyze the instant response capabilities. Now, here is why I'm bringing this now, because we will discuss the respond and recover part of this, your risk assessment, later on. But I bring this topic right here and right now, part of the protect, because part of it is to make sure that you have the mechanism at this stage in protecting your devices to alert to that next stage. Remember here, when I mean protect is anything that you put in place to support the ability for you and your organization to secure the assets that prevent the likelihood that an attack actually will realize. So the key thing is that support the ability for you to secure those assets. So that's why I bring the instant response capabilities at this point in this stage. The other one is measure key performance indicators. If you don't have one, I would put something in place to measure what is the capability of your protection mechanisms. Yes, I do have EDR, endpoint detection response there, but do you know if they are reporting accurately? How many times they go down? How many times you have false positives and whatnot? So, do you have that? Do you know what your baseline is? If you don't have KPIs, you will never know. If you don't provide some type of oversight of those and measurements, it not even need to be KPIs, right? Uh, put some measurements in place. So here's the difference between metrics and measurements, right? Measurements you just collect and make sure that you understand the level of your alerts. And metrics means you put a sort of a green light and a red light. A green light, you're okay here. I receive 100 alerts per day, and then a red line is, either above that, I receive 200, or below that, I receive 50. So something is wrong, is not your baseline anymore. So KPIs you put in place as well, because that's a key indicator that something went wrong. So you use those measurements to validate your protection of your devices. And you, as a risk assessor, will leverage those, also part of your assessment, and also refocus if you need to go in a particular area or application of the endpoint that you need to focus a little bit more. So gather feedbacks and insight. That's the third tip here for you. Conduct employee surveys. Hold focus group on IT security teams. Understand basically interviews on how the devices are protected, how they maintain, how they install, how they upgrade, and how they ensure the protection mechanisms are up and running effectively and efficiently as they move on. Do any of those had a performance hit that they had to disable completely or partially the protection mechanism? Those are the conversations you will have with these subject matter experts. Review the security audit reports, if any. If not, let's make sure that it's part of your recommendation that you have something. And not only for the IT subject matter expert, also the security subject matter expert. You want to have not a passive cybersecurity program. You want to have an active cybersecurity program. How do you ensure that you're receiving information from all your devices? How do you know if one of those devices stop communicating Just don't say, well, it's their fault. They're supposed to ensure that. No, you are supposed to be there as an active cybersecurity expert, an active cybersecurity program. How do you ensure that you are receiving consistently from 100 devices their logs? And how do you know that you stopped receiving from 2 of them and now you receive from 98? Do you have any triggers? Do you have any validations? So, once again, continuously improving your program. So, reviewing audit logs reports are very important. And as a risk assessor, you will ensure part of your inventory, part on the device and identify that if you have 100 devices, you ensure that your SIM is collecting from 100. You make sure your audit report has 100. Make sure that consistency across the board. So, the fourth tip here, the final one I'm going to leave you at this, is refine and iterate. You always going to be continuously improving, refining, fine tuning your assessment. So revisit the definition of your assessment, reconsider and define what protect is, what you're trying to achieve. My tip here, stay with the cybersecurity program. Don't try to defend your own position. Don't start the sentence with a pronoun. I believe, or I do this, or I did that based on my experience. No, just use the third party industry accepted framework. Adjust security controls and practices. If you find something that is not up to par and that could use some improvement based on your framework, based on the results of your assessment, make sure that it's part of your recommendations that put into place. Now, you will find stuff. It is always that way. But what you do with this, you need to have sort of a issue management program. It can be as simple as a spreadsheet. Put the finding there, put the owner, put the plan of actions and milestone, your POM. If you're in the government, you know this acronym, or put the remediation plan, right? The mitigation plan, whatever you call the stuff that you're going to do to fix what you found. Put that way, plain English. So you find this stuff, put in a spreadsheet. Make sure that part of that assessment, you brought in your asset owner, you brought in all your stakeholders. They are aware that you're doing this assessment. They are aware that you will come up with findings, and they are on point to fix those and bring the program up to par. So make sure you have that. Continuously monitor it and improve. So you will continue doing these assessments. And if you have a large environment, it will take a while to come around to the same one again. Perhaps, large enterprises with limited staff, if you assess an application, first quarter 2024, perhaps, going around the entire thing, all your critical assets and getting back to that same critical asset might be another 3 years. So it's not going to be that often. Now, if you have an army of assessors, yes, you're probably going to get there faster. But making sure that is a continuous improvement, not only on their mechanisms, right? If you assess this critical device and then you assess this critical device, if the underlying, for example, the onboarding of new assets, if you fix it here, this will be fixed right here. So you want to make sure that it doesn't mean you're not going to for continuously, you have to come back to the same one over and over. No, those are underlying common processes across the entire enterprise. So as assessing this environment versus this, you're already doing this continuously assessment. So don't worry about that. Also, you have to take an inner look on your own program. So your risk assessment program is catching everything. It's doing smoothly. It's going smoothly. Do you have to adapt anything, change anything? This is the part that you start doing and maturing. You discover when you did your first assessment that some things didn't go as smooth as I thought it would. Make the adjustment to the second assessment. And you say, well, it got better, but it could be a little bit more smoother. So let's do the assessment, do the changes that you need, and do your third assessment. So continuous improvement, not only for your stakeholders, but for yourself as well. Last tips here, and I'll leave you, promise, right here. So communicate clearly, communicate with all your stakeholders what you're doing, and seek expert guidance find someone that actually done these assessments, find someone that actually implement these remediation programs. And even though you might be an expert on certain protection tools, seek the advice of the subject matter experts. How this device, protection device, should be working, what the features that you have turned on, and most importantly, what the features you don't have turned on. Because that is a blind spot if you haven't turned on a particular feature, or they didn't turn it on because there's another device that actually covering that area, so they don't have, two devices or two applications doing the same job at the same time. You don't know until you ask. So communicate with the experts to assist your risk assessment.